Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let the world slow down. You've just entered a realm where stories drift like soft whispers in the night, guiding you into peaceful dreams. Welcome to the sleepy storyteller's whisper, where ancient myths, gentle lullabies, and timeless tales wrap around you like a warm embrace. Every story is crafted to soothe your mind, ease your heart, and lull you into a restful slumber. Tonight's tale will take you on a journey through forgotten lands, starry skies, and the soft echoes of history. But before we begin, tell me, what kind of story would you like to hear next? A legend of old? A journey through the sands of time? Or perhaps a gentle fable whispered by the wind? Let me know in the comments, and together, we'll create the perfect escape into dreams. Now, settle in, relax, and let the story begin. The peaceful ziggurats of Sumer. The moonlit steppes of Uar. The night sky above Uar was clear, the full moon casting a soft, silvery glow over the city. The great ziggurat, towering and ancient, rose into the heavens, its steps winding like a sacred path toward the stars. Beneath its towering presence, the city was quiet, only the gentle whispers of the wind through the palm trees and the distant hum of temple hymns broke the stillness. A young scribe named Tammuz stood at the base of the ziggurat, gazing upward in awe. His heart beat with anticipation as he lifted his robe and began to climb. The stone beneath his bare feet was cool, worn smooth by the countless pilgrims who had ascended before him. The air was thick with the scent of incense from the temple below, and a soft rustling of the leaves created a melody that harmonized with the distant chants. With each step, Tammuz felt closer to something greater, something timeless. The moonlight bathed him in its gentle glow, casting shadows that seemed to dance across the stone. As he climbed higher, he could feel the weight of history all around him, the footsteps of kings, priests, and dreamers who had walked this path long before him. The ziggurat was silent, save for the soft murmur of the hymns drifting from the temple at its base. The sound was like a lullaby, ancient and soothing, winding its way up the steps to cradle Tammuz's thoughts. He paused for a moment, looking out over the city, its clay rooftops and narrow streets bathed in moonlight, the flickering flames of oil lamps like tiny stars below. The city seemed peaceful, as though it, too, had surrendered to the calm of the night. Tammuz continued his ascent, his breathing steady, his heart calm. The higher he climbed, the more the world seemed to fade away. The hymns grew softer, the wind more gentle, and the stars above shone brighter, guiding him toward the top. The air was thin up here, cool against his skin, and he felt his body grow lighter with every step. Finally, he reached the top, the highest point in all of Uar. The temple's sacred altar lay before him, the moonlight reflecting off its polished stone. He sat down, crossing his legs, and closed his eyes. The world below seemed so far away now, and the hymns had faded into a soft hum in his mind. As the cool breeze touched his face, Tammuz felt himself drifting, his mind becoming weightless. The ancient chants, the moonlit stone, the vastness of the sky, all wrapped him in a peaceful embrace. And as the night deepened, the young scribe surrendered to sleep, his dreams carried away on the whispers of the wind. The keeper of the sacred flames. The night was still, save for the quiet rustling of the palm trees and the soft sigh of the wind that wound its way through the city of Uar. The ziggurat, a towering monument of stone and spirit, loomed against the dark sky, its silhouette carved by the light of the stars. At the peak, where the temple stood, the eternal flame burned brightly, its light a constant presence in the vastness of the desert night. Atop the ziggurat, the temple priest, Asher, stood in quiet reverence, his robes flowing like the whispers of the wind. His sandals were worn from years of service, and his eyes, though young, held the weight of ancient wisdom. The sacred flame flickered before him, its light dancing and casting long shadows against the stones of the altar. Asher's hands moved with practiced grace as he added fresh offerings of oil to the fire. The flame responded, growing brighter for a moment before settling into its steady glow. The scent of burning incense filled the air, mingling with the cool night breeze. Every movement Asher made was deliberate, respectful, a silent prayer in motion. This flame was not just a fire, it was the heartbeat of the city, a symbol of the god's eternal presence, and Asher's responsibility was to protect it. The wind began to pick up, its soft whispers carrying the ancient prayers of the temple into the night. The voices of priests long gone, their words etched in the walls of the ziggurat, seemed to rise with the breeze, blending with the flames and creating a sacred rhythm. Asher closed his eyes for a moment, listening to the wind. He could hear the faintest hum, as if the flame itself was responding to the prayers, a constant dialogue between the heavens and the earth. The city below was quiet, its streets empty, the sounds of everyday life faded into the distance. The only movement came from the occasional camel that passed through the narrow alleys, the soft clip-clop of hooves barely reaching Asher's ears. But here, at the top of the ziggurat, the world seemed to pause, as if time itself had slowed. As the fire crackled, Asher took a deep breath, allowing the warmth of the flame to fill his chest, grounding him. The eternal fire was his responsibility, but in that moment, he felt as though the flame was watching over him, too. He stayed a while longer, his thoughts drifting like the smoke that curled upward into the night sky. And as the hours passed, the flame continued to flicker, steady and unwavering, its light carrying prayers into the wind, whispered from the earth to the gods. The starlit dreams of Nana's temple. High above the city of Uar, where the ancient ziggurat towered under the vast desert sky, the temple of Nana stood as a beacon of light in the darkened world. It was late in the night, and the cool breeze from the river swept through the stone walls, bringing with it the scent of jasmine and myrrh from the city below. On the temple's rooftop, a lone figure sat, an astronomer named Enki, his eyes fixed upon the infinite expanse of the sky. The moon was full, casting a silver glow over the land. The stars shimmered like precious jewels scattered across a velvet tapestry, their brilliance unmatched. Enki's fingers traced the lines of constellations that had been mapped by his ancestors for centuries. The great hunter, the celestial chariot, the swirling serpent, all these patterns spoke to him, not just as symbols, but as part of a greater cosmic story, written in the heavens above. He sat in the silence, his breath slow and measured, each exhale in harmony with the rhythm of the universe. The temple around him was still, its stone pillars casting long shadows in the moonlight. The only sound was the soft rustling of his robe as the breeze played through it, and the distant hum of the river, which seemed to echo the pulse of the stars. Enki's eyes grew heavy as he continued to trace the constellations. His mind drifted with the stars, each flicker of light pulling him further into a peaceful trance. He imagined the gods, the ancient ones who had given these stars their names, watching over him from their celestial thrones. His heart beat in time with the distant pulse of the universe, and for a moment, he felt as if he, too, was a part of the grand design. The night deepened, and the stars seemed to grow brighter, their light reaching down to touch the earth. Enki closed his eyes for a moment, and in that brief moment of darkness, the stars continued their silent dance in his mind. He could almost hear their whispers, ancient and soft, carrying the wisdom of the gods through the air. As he opened his eyes, Enki let go of the world below. The steady pull of the stars, the rhythmic sway of the night, lulled him further into a state of calm. He leaned back against the cool stone, his gaze still on the heavens, and allowed the universe to guide him gently towards sleep. The stars continued their watch, eternal and unwavering, as the astronomer drifted into a starlit dream, carried on the cosmic winds of the night. The Ziggurat's secret garden. In the heart of the grand ziggurat of UR, away from the bustling streets and the hum of daily life, there existed a secret garden, hidden, untouched by time. It was a sanctuary of life and color, a place where the air was thick with the fragrance of jasmine and rose, and the gentle trickle of water could be heard from the fountains nestled among the green. As the sun began to set, casting its golden light over the vast city below, a young healer named Lila stepped into the garden. Her feet, weary from the day's work, sank softly into the cool earth. The garden was a refuge, a place she had discovered in her youth and returned to whenever she needed peace. The ziggurat, with all its grandeur and divine purpose, had hidden this lush oasis deep within its walls, where only those who sought it with a quiet heart could find it. The garden was small but perfect, the plants carefully tended by the temple's priests who had long ago recognized its importance. Trees, their branches heavy with fruit, swayed in the evening breeze. The soft hum of bees could be heard as they flitted from flower to flower, gathering nectar. The gentle sound of water echoed softly from the bubbling fountains, the cool streams of water weaving through the rocks like delicate threads of life. Lila made her way to a stone bench nestled beneath a fig tree, its leaves rustling in the wind. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the serene sounds of the garden wash over her. The stresses of the day, the patience she had treated, the herbs she had mixed, seemed to fade away, leaving only the stillness of the garden and the warmth of the setting sun. As she sat, a soft wind stirred the air, carrying the sweet scent of flowers and the faintest trace of incense from the temple's altars. Lila took a deep breath, her body relaxing as the quiet beauty of the garden settled into her bones. Her hands, stained with the marks of her work, rested on her lap. Slowly, the tension in her shoulders eased, and her mind quieted. The world outside the garden seemed far away now, lost in the vastness of time. The sun dipped lower, casting long shadows across the garden. The first stars of the evening began to twinkle in the sky above, their light soft and distant. In the peaceful silence, Lila's eyelids fluttered closed. The sound of the fountains, the rustling leaves, and the soft call of a night bird drifted her into a gentle slumber. In the heart of the ziggurat, where time seemed to stand still, the healer found rest. And in the secret garden, hidden from the world, her dreams blossomed like the flowers that surrounded her. The scribe's last word. The small chamber was dim, lit only by the soft flicker of an oil lamp that cast long shadows against the walls. The faint scent of ink mixed with the dry dust of ancient scrolls and clay tablets, filling the air with the weight of knowledge and devotion. In the quiet stillness, the only sound was the soft scratch of a quill against stone, the rhythmic motion of a scholar deep in his work. At the wooden desk, seated on a worn, comfortable stool, sat a devoted scribe named Nabu. His ink-stained hands moved with precision as he meticulously transcribed the ancient texts onto clay tablets. His eyes, tired from countless hours of work, remained focused, driven by an unrelenting passion to preserve the wisdom of the past. The lamp beside him burned low, its flame flickering as if in time with his thoughts. The scrolls before him were filled with the words of kings and priests, histories written in the sacred language of the gods. Nabu had spent years transcribing these texts, his life dedicated to preserving the knowledge of his people. His fingers were calloused from the constant contact with the rough clay, but he continued without hesitation. He had no time for sleep, no time for rest. His work was his calling. But as the hours stretched on, fatigue began to creep in. His once sharp movements grew slower, his gaze hazier, as his mind and body began to yield to the pull of sleep. The quill in his hand faltered, then gently fell to the side, leaving a faint ink mark on the tablet before him. Nabu leaned forward, his head resting on the cool surface of his workbench, his hands falling limp beside the clay tablets. The lamp flickered once more, casting a soft glow over his tired face. The scribe's breath deepened, growing slower and steadier, his chest rising and falling in time with the gentle warmth of the lamp. The flame, still flickering, seemed to stand guard over him, its soft light protecting the sacred words he had spent his life recording. As the quiet hum of the lamp filled the room, the scholar's eyes fluttered closed. The words on the clay tablets blurred, and the distant sounds of the world outside faded into the background. In the stillness of that moment, Nabu surrendered to sleep, his tired body resting, his mind carried away by dreams of forgotten kingdoms and divine wisdom. His ink-stained hands lay still, the tablets surrounding him like silent witnesses to his devotion. And in the quiet of the scholar's chamber, the lamp's flickering flame remained, casting its gentle light over the scribe's final word. The whispering breeze of Eridu. In the ancient city of Eridu, where the Euphrates whispered secrets to the land, the grand temple stood as a testament to time. Its towering walls, adorned with carvings of gods and kings, stretched high into the sky, their shadows long and silent as the day gave way to night. Within the temple's inner sanctum, the air was thick with the scent of incense and the weight of history. A weary traveler, his feet sore from the long journey, made his way through the temple's vast corridors. His footsteps echoed softly against the stone, the rhythmic sound blending with the distant hum of the wind outside. As he entered the temple, a cool breeze greeted him, flowing gently through the open archways and winding its way through the ancient halls. The wind seemed to carry something with it, voices, faint but clear, like whispers carried across time. The traveler paused, feeling a chill ripple through him. Was it the wind? Or was it the voices of those who had come before him, kings, priests, dreamers, whose presence still lingered within these sacred walls? He sat down on a smooth stone slab near the altar, his eyes tracing the intricate carvings that adorned the walls. The faces of gods, kings, and long-forgotten figures seemed to gaze down at him, their eyes filled with wisdom and mystery. The breeze, soft and insistent, swirled around him, carrying the faintest echoes of prayers and songs sung long ago. As the traveler rested, his mind began to wander, carried by the whispering breeze. He imagined the great kings who had stood in this very temple, their voices rising in prayer, their hearts heavy with the weight of their rule. He thought of the dreamers who had come to this sacred place, seeking visions of the gods, hoping for glimpses of the future. Their stories seemed to linger in the air, woven into the very stones of the temple. The wind hummed again, louder now, as if acknowledging his thoughts. It twisted around the columns and flowed through the open windows, filling the temple with its soft, rhythmic song. The traveler closed his eyes and breathed deeply, allowing the breeze to wrap around him like a gentle embrace. The ancient voices seemed to fade into the background, replaced by the comforting hum of the wind. In that moment, the traveler felt a sense of peace settle over him, as if the spirits of the past were guiding him toward rest. He lay back on the cool stone, his body sinking into the sacred ground, the wind's soft melody lulling him into a deep slumber. And as he slept, the whispering breeze of Eridu continued its timeless journey, carrying the voices of the past into the night, a lullaby woven from the echoes of history itself. The river's silent song. The moon hung high in the sky, casting a pale, silver glow over the ancient city of Uar. From the towering ziggurat, the city stretched out in all directions, its bustling streets now quiet in the cool embrace of night. Beneath the ziggurat, the Euphrates River wound its way through the landscape, its surface glistening like liquid glass, reflecting the moon's soft light. At the very top of the ziggurat, a lone priest stood, his robes billowing softly in a breeze that swept across the vast, open space. His gaze was fixed on the river below, the shimmering water calling to him like a silent song. The distant hum of the city seemed to fade, replaced by the soft, soothing sound of the river's flow. The priest, named Asher, had spent his life in the service of the gods, tending to their sacred rituals and offerings. But tonight, he found himself drawn to the peace that lay beyond the temple walls, beyond the sacred ceremonies. The river, ancient and eternal, had always held a special place in his heart. It was as if the water itself carried the whispers of the gods, their voices rising from the depths and flowing with the current. Asher closed his eyes for a moment, allowing the soft, rhythmic sound of the river to fill his ears. The wind carried the faint scent of damp earth and the fresh air of the river's banks. The moonlight danced across the water, and for a moment, Asher felt as though he was floating, carried by the current of the river itself. The flow of water seemed to echo in his mind, a melody that played in perfect harmony with the stillness of the night. The ancient river had seen countless generations pass by, its waters untouched by time. And in that moment, Asher felt a deep connection to the past, to the gods, and to the land itself. It was as if the river, the moon, and the stars were all part of one great song, a song that had been sung for millennia and would continue long after him. The priest's breath slowed as he stood in the quiet, his mind calm, his heart at peace. The river's song washed over him, carrying away the weight of his responsibilities and leaving only a sense of serenity in its place. The stars above twinkled softly, and the moon's reflection on the water seemed to glow brighter, guiding him deeper into the stillness. In the silence of that moment, Asher surrendered to the river's song, allowing its rhythm to lull him into a peaceful, tranquil sleep, his spirit drifting on the currents of time. The goddess's gentle blessing. The temple of the great goddess Inanna stood silent under the blanket of the night sky, its stone walls bathed in the soft glow of the moon. Inside, the flickering light of oil lamps cast gentle shadows across the sacred altar, where offerings of incense and golden fruits lay, untouched but for the soft breaths of those who came to pray. A young devotee, Serena, knelt before the altar, her hands clasped in quiet reverence. Her long, dark hair spilled over her shoulders, and her simple robe seemed to shimmer in the soft light, reflecting the calm of the temple. Her heart beat steadily in her chest as she offered her prayer, her voice barely more than a whisper, speaking only to the goddess herself. The air around Serena was thick with the scent of incense, a sweet, smoky fragrance that seemed to carry the weight of countless prayers. The gentle flicker of the oil lamps created a dance of light and shadow, and for a moment, the young woman felt as if she were suspended in time, her voice and her thoughts intertwined with the ancient prayers that had been spoken in this very place for generations. As she whispered her final plea, a soft warmth seemed to surround her, like an invisible embrace. It was a warmth that reached deep into her chest, filling her with a sense of peace and comfort. It was as if the goddess herself had heard her prayer and, in her divine presence, was offering her a gentle blessing. Serena closed her eyes, her hands still resting on the cool stone of the altar, feeling the warmth settle around her like a soft blanket. The stillness of the temple deepened, and the world outside seemed to fall away. The distant sounds of the city, the whispers of the wind through the palm trees, the low murmur of the river, all of it faded into the background, leaving only the quiet serenity of the goddess's temple. Serena's breath slowed, her body relaxing into the gentle embrace of the warmth that surrounded her. Her heart, once full of the day's worries, now beat with a calm, steady rhythm, each pulse carrying her deeper into tranquility. The flickering lamps cast a final glow across her face, and in that moment, the invisible hands of the goddess seemed to guide her towards sleep. The young devotee let go of her thoughts, surrendering to the divine presence that wrapped around her, her body resting gently on the cool stone floor. As she drifted into slumber, she felt the goddess's blessing settle like a soft kiss upon her brow, and her dreams took her to a place of peace, where time slowed and the light of the stars shimmered brightly above her. The merchant's twilight rest. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a deep orange glow across the sky, the weary merchant, Alam, arrived at the temple gates. His journey had been long, the dusty road stretching far and wide, his feet sore from the endless miles he had walked. He had traveled with goods to trade, braving the harsh desert winds and the weight of his heavy pack, but now, as the cool evening air began to settle over the land, he sought refuge within the temple's sacred walls. The temple stood before him, a towering structure made of sun-worn stone, its intricate carvings telling tales of gods and kings. As Alam stepped through the archway, a wave of relief washed over him. The coolness of the stone floor beneath his feet was a welcome contrast to the heat of the day. The air was thick with the scent of burning incense, the sweet and earthy aroma mingling with the faint fragrance of blooming lilies from the temple gardens. He made his way deeper into the heart of the temple, where soft, rhythmic chants echoed through the air, carried by the voices of the priests. The sound was soothing, like a gentle wave breaking upon the shore, a melody that seemed to embrace his tired soul. The flicker of oil lamps cast dancing shadows upon the stone walls, their light warm and calming, casting a soft golden hue over everything it touched. Alam found a quiet corner near the inner sanctum, where the air was heavy with peace and reverence. He unburdened himself of his pack, his muscles aching from the weight, and sank down onto a low stone bench. The chants continued, each word woven into the fabric of the temple's stillness, and for the first time in days, Alam felt his body begin to unwind. He closed his eyes for a moment, letting the sounds of the temple wash over him. The incense in the air seemed to carry a sense of divine comfort, each breath drawing him further into tranquility. The rhythmic chants blended with the soft rustle of the temple's hanging tapestries, creating a lullaby of sacredness that seemed to reach into the deepest parts of his being. His shoulders, once tense with the weight of travel, began to relax. The exhaustion that had settled in his bones seemed to melt away, replaced by the gentle pull of sleep that called to him like a soft whisper. Alam's breath deepened, slow and steady, as he surrendered to the peaceful embrace of the temple. The flickering light of the lamps and the gentle hum of the chants wrapped around him like a blanket, and in the heart of the temple, under the watchful gaze of the gods, the merchant found solace. As the last notes of the chant faded into the night, Alam's eyes fluttered closed, his body finally at rest, his spirit carried away on the rhythm of the temple's quiet symphony. The children of the ziggurat. In the heart of the ancient city of Uar, the towering ziggurat cast a long shadow over the land as the sun dipped below the horizon. The temple steps were quiet now, the bustling sounds of the day fading into the calm of night. Beneath the shadow of the great structure, a small group of young apprentices gathered around the warmth of lanterns, their faces bathed in the soft, golden glow. The air was cool and still, but the scent of burning oil and incense filled the air, creating an atmosphere of tranquility and reverence. At the center of the group sat an elder, his silver hair gleaming in the lantern light. His name was Enki, and his voice, though soft, held the weight of centuries of wisdom. He had spent his life serving the gods and guiding the young minds of the temple, teaching them the ancient ways of Sumer. Tonight, like so many others, Enki gathered the apprentices around him, ready to share the stories of the gods that had shaped their world. The children, eager and attentive, settled onto the cool stone floor, their eyes wide with curiosity. Some were no older than 10, others barely past their 15th year, but all of them were bound by a deep respect for the elder and the stories he carried with him. The lanterns flickered gently, casting shadows that seemed to come alive on the stone walls, as if the gods themselves were listening in on the tales about to unfold. Enki's voice began low, soothing and rhythmic, a melody of ancient words that seemed to carry the very essence of time. He spoke of the great gods, Anu, Enlil, and Inanna, of the mighty floods, the celestial battles, and the wisdom of the stars. As his words wove through the air, the children listened with rapt attention, their hearts and minds transported to the world of the gods. The elder's voice held a calm certainty, and with each passing word, the world around the children seemed to fade. The flicker of the lanterns became softer, the air warmer, and soon, the stories began to weave their magic. The young apprentices, once wide-eyed and full of energy, began to feel the gentle pull of sleep. The quiet rhythm of Enki's voice seemed to lull them, carrying them into a peaceful state where the boundaries between myth and reality blurred. One by one, the children's eyelids grew heavier, their breathing slowing as the stories of the gods wrapped around them like a comforting embrace. Their heads drooped, some resting on each other's shoulders, others leaning into the cool stone walls of the ziggurat. Yet Enki's voice never wavered. It continued to flow like a river of calm, guiding them deeper into slumber. As the last of the stories faded into the night, the apprentices lay in peaceful rest, their dreams filled with the gods of Sumer, their faces serene under the gentle glow of the lanterns. The elder remained seated, his heart full of quiet satisfaction, knowing that the stories of the gods would live on in these young hearts long after the night had passed. The silent watcher of the night. The moon hung low in the night sky, its pale light casting long shadows over the sacred temple. The ziggurat towered above the city of Uar, its stone steps stretching high into the heavens. All was quiet, save for the soft rustling of the night wind, whispering through the palm trees and across the temple grounds. The streets below, once lively with merchants and worshippers, now lay still, wrapped in the peace of the evening. At the top of the temple steps, standing tall against the quiet backdrop of the city, was a lone figure. His name was Eresh, a guardian tasked with watching over the sacred grounds through the long hours of the night. His leather armor creaked softly with each movement, the faintest clink of metal the only sound that disturbed the otherwise silent air. His sharp eyes scanned the horizon, ever vigilant, ever aware of the sacred temple and the peaceful city it protected. The night was cool, the air heavy with the scent of incense rising from the temple's inner sanctum. The flickering light of distant oil lamps barely reached the highest steps, leaving Eresh standing in near darkness, illuminated only by the pale glow of the moon. His duty was to ensure that the temple remained undisturbed, that no harm befell the holy site under his watch. For hours, Eresh moved slowly, methodically, up and down the ancient steps. He passed the stone pillars and weathered carvings that adorned the temple walls, his footsteps echoing in the stillness. Though his body ached from the hours of standing, his mind remained sharp. The silence of the night had a rhythm of its own, a quiet pulse that settled into his bones, reminding him of the stillness of the world at this hour. But as the moon climbed higher in the sky, Eresh's weariness grew. The night's quietude, so often his companion, began to seep deeper into him. The cool breeze that whispered through the temple seemed to carry a soft lullaby, coaxing him to rest. His eyelids fluttered as the peace of the night wrapped around him like a blanket. The once clear thoughts in his mind began to blur, and his breath slowed. Eresh paused at the top of the ziggurat, gazing out over the city one last time. The distant stars twinkled faintly, as if offering their own form of comfort. For a moment, he stood motionless, his body heavy with the stillness of the night. The weight of the day, the weight of his duty, seemed to melt away, leaving him light and calm. The gentle embrace of rest finally claimed him. His back, once tense with the burden of vigilance, softened as he leaned against a stone pillar. His eyes closed, and the world around him faded into a quiet haze. The gentle rhythm of the night, the soft breeze, and the distant sounds of the city drifted into his dreams, where peace awaited him. And so, the silent watcher of the night surrendered to sleep, his duty fulfilled, his heart at ease, under the watchful gaze of the moon. The festival's fading echoes. The day had been filled with joy, the air thick with the sounds of laughter and music. The city of Uar had celebrated beneath the brilliant sun, its streets alive with the vibrant colors of banners and flowers. The temple grounds, once quiet and sacred, had become a lively gathering place where merchants, priests, and villagers shared in the merriment. The rhythmic beat of drums had resonated through the air, weaving into the harmonies of flutes and lutes. Dancers twirled gracefully beneath the open sky, their robes billowing like the wind. But now, as the sun dipped below the horizon, the music had softened, the bright colors dimmed under the cooling shade of twilight. The laughter, once so loud and exuberant, had faded into gentle murmurs. The temple, once alive with the energy of celebration, stood calm and serene, the echoes of the day now whispered by the wind. Within the temple's sacred halls, The guests had slowly retreated from the festivities, their minds and bodies weary from hours of celebration. Some lingered in quiet conversation, their voices soft as they shared final thoughts before the night. Others found solace in the cool marble floors, their bodies finally settling from the day's excitement. As the last of the candles flickered out in the distance, a hush fell over the temple grounds. The incense that had once filled the air with sweet aromas now lingered in the background, a gentle reminder of the festival's magic. The soft rustle of fabric filled the silence as the temple's guests made their way to the sacred rooms where they would rest for the night. Outside, the sound of the Euphrates continued its slow, steady journey, the murmur of the water a peaceful contrast to the lively noise of the day. Its soft ripple echoed in the distance, blending with the quiet sounds of the city as it slowly settled into slumber. Inside the temple, the guests lay upon the stone floors or in woven mats, their bodies unwinding from the day's festivities. Some closed their eyes as the final whispers of the evening faded into the night, while others allowed the last remnants of celebration to slip away from their minds. The evening breeze fluttered the hanging tapestries, their fabric moving like the soft rustling of the world itself. The incense still curled in the air, now a calming fragrance that soothed the spirit. As the city of Uar drifted into the stillness of the night, the temple embraced its guests in the quietude that followed the festival's end. The fading echoes of laughter and music were replaced by the peaceful hum of the river, the rustling of fabric, and the gentle exhale of a world slipping into sleep. And so, with the last remnants of the day's celebration behind them, the temple's guests drifted into dreams, carried away on the soft whispers of the night, as the festival's fading echoes blended with the tranquility of rest. The Dreamweaver's Melody. The temple courtyard was bathed in the soft glow of twilight, the air cool and fragrant with the scent of blooming lotus flowers. The sounds of the day had all but faded, leaving behind a tranquil hush that embraced the sacred space. Above, the stars began to twinkle softly, their light a gentle reminder of the world beyond. The temple, once filled with the hum of worship and the rustling of robes, now stood still, its stone walls embracing the quiet that only the night could bring. In the center of the courtyard, by the flickering light of a single oil lamp, sat a lone musician. His name was Dumuzi, a temple artist whose skill with the lyre had long been revered. His hands, calloused from years of practice, moved gracefully over the strings, producing notes that seemed to float through the air like a soft breeze. The tune he played was gentle, almost mournful, yet it held a calmness that soothed the heart. The lyre's soft melody echoed against the stone walls, carrying with it a sense of serenity, a gentle hum that seemed to seep into the very ground beneath him. Each note was a delicate thread in the fabric of the night, weaving a lullaby that called to the soul. As Dumuzi's fingers moved over the strings, the world around him seemed to slow. The rustle of the temple's tapestries, the faint murmurs of the evening breeze, even the distant hum of the river, all faded into the background as the music enveloped him. With each passing moment, his fingers slowed, the melody becoming softer, quieter. His eyes closed, and for a brief moment, the musician felt as though he were no longer part of the temple, no longer part of the world. He was simply a vessel for the music, a conduit for the peaceful rhythm that flowed through him. The tune, once lively and bright, now softened, like a stream flowing quietly into the night. The final notes of the melody drifted from his lyre, lingering in the air for a moment before fading into the stillness. Dumuzi's hands stilled, resting gently on the strings, his breath slow and deep. The evening had woven its magic around him, and the pull of sleep was gentle and inevitable. The last traces of his music were absorbed by the temple, by the very stone and air, leaving behind a peaceful calm. As the world grew quiet, Dumuzi slowly closed his eyes, his body relaxing into the stillness of the night. The soft, lingering echoes of his melody played on in his mind, lulling him into a deep, peaceful rest. In the sacred silence of the temple, the Dreamweaver's melody faded into the darkness, leaving only the warmth of sleep. The dusk prayer's comfort. As the last rays of the sun sank beneath the horizon, the great ziggurat stood silhouetted against the amber sky, its towering steps casting long shadows over the temple courtyard. The air, once warm from the heat of the day, had begun to cool, the evening breeze carrying with it the soft whispers of the world settling into rest. The golden light of dusk slowly faded, leaving behind the deepening hues of twilight. At the top of the ziggurat, high above the city of Uar, stood a lone priestess, her form a quiet presence against the fading sky. Her name was Ninsun, a devoted servant of the gods, known for her serene grace and unwavering faith. Her long robe fluttered gently in the wind, the fabric rustling softly, like the murmur of the earth itself. In her hands, Ninsun held a small, carved idol, its smooth surface worn from years of devotion. She gazed out over the city, the streets now empty and calm, the sounds of daily life replaced by the soft rhythm of the wind and the distant murmur of the Euphrates. The weight of the day's tasks had eased, leaving only the quiet satisfaction of knowing that all had been done in the service of the gods. As the sun disappeared completely, the temple's courtyard grew still, the air thick with the peaceful serenity of the night. Ninsun raised the idol to her lips, her voice low and gentle as she began the dusk prayer, a final offering to the heavens before the world drifted into sleep. Her words, ancient and familiar, blended seamlessly with the evening breeze. The prayer was simple, yet profound, a request for guidance, peace, and protection through the coming night. With each word, her voice seemed to grow softer, merging with the sounds of the world around her, the rustle of the wind, the quiet chirp of distant crickets, and the soft lapping of the river's waters. The prayer was no longer just her voice, it became the air itself, the earth beneath her feet, the stars that began to twinkle in the darkening sky. As Ninsun's voice trailed off, she stood in silence for a moment, feeling the comfort of her prayer settle into her spirit. The temple, the ziggurat, and the city all seemed to breathe with her. The peaceful stillness of the night enveloped her, and the faintest smile touched her lips. She had done her duty, and now, with the setting sun and the evening winds, she too could rest. Slowly, she lowered the idol, her prayer complete. The world around her felt complete as well, the evening carrying with it a deep sense of calm. Ninsun, at peace with the gods, took a deep breath and allowed herself to stand still, her heart at ease, as the quiet comfort of the dusk prayer settled in. And as the final traces of sunlight faded from the sky, the priestess closed her eyes, surrendering to the stillness of the night. The temple and its guardian were at rest, and so was she. The eternal rest of kings. Deep within the sacred heart of the temple, beneath the towering ziggurat, a hush had fallen over the chambers where time itself seemed to pause. The ancient stone walls of the crypts were cool and smooth, their surfaces worn by centuries of reverence. The flickering light of oil lamps cast long, dancing shadows across the golden chambers, their warmth contrasting with the eternal coolness of the tombs. The air was thick with the scent of incense, the smoke rising in delicate spirals, carrying prayers and offerings to the heavens. In these sacred chambers rested the kings of old, their once mighty forms now preserved in silence, draped in the finest cloths and surrounded by treasures from a time long past. Their faces, carved into the stone sarcophagi, remained calm and serene, their eyes closed in eternal sleep. Though their bodies had returned to the earth, their spirits lingered, woven into the very fabric of the temple, their dreams echoing through the quiet halls. The ziggurat, tall and silent, stood above the chambers, a monument to the power of these rulers, their legacies immortalized in the stones. The temple had been built as a place of rest, not only for the kings, but for the souls of the city itself. Within its walls, the past and present seemed to blur, and the line between the living and the dead grew faint. The kings of Sumer rested here, their reigns long over, yet their influence and presence lingered, forever a part of the temple's sacred ground. A soft breeze filtered through the temple's open columns, carrying with it the whispers of time, fragments of forgotten songs, fragments of royal commands, and the murmur of ancient dreams. These were the dreams of rulers who had once commanded great armies, built grand cities, and carved their names into history. Now, as the night deepened, these dreams blended with the eternal peace of the ziggurat, flowing like the river that wound its way through the city below. The golden chambers, filled with treasures and relics of ages past, stood untouched, yet alive with memory. The flicker of light from the lamps reflected off the gleaming surfaces of golden jewelry, ceremonial swords, and intricately woven tapestries. Even in death, the kings were surrounded by symbols of their reigns, objects that had once carried their power, now reminders of their eternal rest. In the stillness, the spirits of the kings seemed to sleep soundly, their dreams unbroken by the passage of time. Their legacies, woven into the heart of the temple, blended seamlessly with the present, their peace mirrored by the quiet serenity of the world outside. The ziggurat stood firm, a silent sentinel, its shadow stretching across the city, guarding the eternal rest of those who had once ruled over it. And in the deepest silence of the chambers, where time stood still, the kings slept on, forever at rest, their spirits watching over the land they had once governed, their dreams echoing through the ages, woven into the very stones of the temple.